There is a kind of stress that does not come from what is happening. It comes from what is unclear. You do not know how someone will respond. You do not know which option is right. You do not know how difficult something will become once you begin. And somehow, the uncertainty itself starts to feel heavier than the thing. A lot of people think this means they are weak under pressure, indecisive, avoidant, bad at dealing with life. But often the real issue is simpler than that. Your brain is treating uncertainty like danger. And once that happens, even small unknowns can feel strangely hard to face. A message you have not answered. A task with no clear first step. A conversation you do not know how will go. A decision that should be simple but does not feel simple at all. It is not always the size of the thing that overwhelms you. Sometimes it is the fact that you cannot predict it. That is the pattern. For the brain, uncertainty means reduced control. And reduced control often means increased vigilance. Your system starts scanning. What if this goes badly? What if I choose wrong? What if I cannot handle what happens next? What if there is something I am not seeing yet? And the more uncertain something feels, the more energy your mind spends trying to get ahead of it. That is why unclear situations can become so exhausting. Not because they are already dangerous, because your brain is trying to protect you from what might be. This makes more sense than people realize. The brain is built to prefer prediction. It likes patterns. It likes maps. It likes being able to guess what happens next with some degree of accuracy. Prediction helps the nervous system settle. It lowers scanning. It reduces decision load. It creates a feeling of orientation. When that orientation disappears, the brain often shifts into a different mode. It starts monitoring more aggressively. It becomes more alert, more cautious, more effortful. That does not always feel dramatic. Sometimes it just feels like hesitation, or mental fog, or an urge to delay until things feel clearer. This is why a small, uncertain task can feel harder than a large, clear one. A big task with clear steps can feel manageable. A tiny task with unclear edges can feel oddly threatening. Not because you are lazy, because ambiguity creates cognitive tension. You do not know where to place your effort yet. You do not know how much will be required. You do not know what kind of emotional cost might be waiting on the other side, so your brain starts treating the unknown itself like a possible problem. And once it does that, overthinking often follows. Because overthinking is not always random. A lot of the time, it is the mind trying to reduce uncertainty before action. If I think long enough, maybe I will feel safer. If I analyze every angle, maybe I will avoid regret. If I wait a little longer, maybe the right answer will become obvious. But that usually does not happen. Because uncertainty is one of those things that rarely disappears through thinking alone. Sometimes action is what creates the clarity your mind is waiting for. And that is exactly why uncertainty can keep people stuck. They are waiting for the feeling of certainty before they move. But the certainty often comes after movement, not before it. This shows up in ordinary life all the time. You delay replying because you are not sure how the tone will land. You avoid beginning because the task feels vague. You postpone decisions because none of the options feel safe enough. You keep researching because choosing too early feels risky. You stay mentally busy because stillness leaves too much room for the unknown. From the outside, this can look like procrastination. From the inside, it often feels like self-protection. That is why shame usually makes it worse. If you already feel uncertain, and then you start telling yourself that you should be handling it better, the nervous system does not relax. It tightens. Now you are carrying the uncertainty and the self-judgment. That makes movement even harder. There is another reason this pattern becomes so sticky. The brain often prefers a bad-known outcome over an unclear unknown one. That sounds irrational, but it happens all the time. People stay in familiar stress because unfamiliar possibility feels harder to organize around. They avoid the message because silence feels easier than unpredictable response. They keep circling decisions because choosing means stepping into territory that has not been emotionally mapped yet. The known may not feel good, but it feels legible. And legibility matters to the nervous system. That is why uncertainty can feel bigger than it looks. It is not just a gap in information. It is a gap in felt safety. So what helps? First, stop trying to eliminate uncertainty completely. That goal sounds reasonable, but it often keeps people trapped. Because life rarely offers complete certainty before action. If that becomes your standard, you will keep waiting for a condition that almost never arrives. The better question is not, how do I make this completely clear? It is, how do I make this clear enough for one next step? That matters, because the brain does not always need a full map. Sometimes it just needs a smaller unknown. If a task feels vague, define the next visible move. If a conversation feels threatening, decide only the opening line. If a choice feels too large, narrow it to 2 real options instead of 10 imagined ones. You are not removing uncertainty. You are reducing its size. That alone can change the nervous system response. Second, separate uncertainty from danger. These are not always the same thing. Your mind may react as if they are the same thing, but unclear does not automatically mean unsafe. Unpredictable does not automatically mean harmful. Not knowing does not automatically mean you are unprepared. This sounds obvious when you hear it calmly. It feels much less obvious when the nervous system is activated. So sometimes you have to say it directly. This is unclear. That does not mean it is dangerous. That sentence creates a little distance. And distance matters. Because once you stop fusing uncertainty with danger, you give yourself more room to think clearly. Third, let action become part of how you gather information. A lot of people treat action as the thing that should happen after clarity. But often clarity is not what comes before action. It is what comes from it. You send the message and now you know more. You begin the task and now the shape becomes visible. You make the call and now the uncertainty shrinks from imagined threat to real information. That does not mean action feels comfortable immediately. It means action often turns invisible fear into visible reality. And visible reality is usually easier for the brain to work with than endless possibility. So if uncertainty has been exhausting you lately, the issue may not be that life is objectively too dangerous. It may be that your brain has started reacting to ambiguity like a threat signal. Once you see that, the experience starts to make more sense. You are not necessarily weak. You are not necessarily broken. You are not even necessarily bad at decisions. You may just be caught in a loop where unclear things trigger vigilance, and vigilance makes movement harder. That is a very human pattern. And it can change. Not by waiting until life stops being uncertain, but by learning how to stay a little steadier inside uncertainty itself. So the next time something unclear starts feeling weirdly heavy, pause before you call yourself lazy, indecisive, or incapable. Ask something more accurate. What exactly is uncertain here? And what is the smallest next step that would make this feel a little more known? That question is often much more useful than trying to force confidence. Because confidence is not always what you need first. Sometimes what you need first is just enough clarity to move. And if this spoke to something you have been dealing with, the next video should be why you shut down. When life feels demanding, because uncertainty often turns into overload when the pressure keeps building.